Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about Moore v. Harper. It's a case out of North Carolina that the Supreme Court has decided to take a look at. The goal is to examine something called the Independent State Legislature doctrine. Okay. This is an argument, a legal theory that has been advanced over and over again in American history, and the Supreme Court has rejected it. This has happened over 100 years. The court has agreed to look at it. 4 members of the court have expressed some support in some way or another for this doctrine. The reason the Supreme Court has always shot this doctrine down is because it quite literally would mean the end of the will of the people. What it would do is stop state courts from basically protecting voting rights in any way, shape, or form. It's based on a reading of the Constitution that requires you to believe that the right to select the representatives wasn't there. It requires adding words. It requires this bizarre twist to get it to say what the proponents of this theory want it to say. If the court decides that this doctrine should be in effect, your vote no longer matters. That's not an overstatement. The state legislature in your state could be like, oh, that blue area over there, that area that always votes blue, we didn't like something that they did with, how they counted the votes or how the votes were cast. We're not going to count those. Or that rural area out there, they stayed open 3 minutes too late. We're not going to count those votes. And there's nothing that can be done. They can gerrymander. They can do whatever they want to keep themselves in power in the state legislature, and then use those seats to control the federal government. This is an existential threat to the republic, to the idea of a representative democracy. And it's being reviewed by a court, 4 of which at some point have expressed some support for the idea. Now, understand there are varying levels of this theory. The one that I just kind of showcased is the literal, there is no limits to what the state legislature can do. And that seems to be the theory that's being advanced. It's the only thing that makes sense because the case itself, Moore v. Harper, it's in North Carolina, where the state legislature has explicitly said how these cases are supposed to be handled. So the only reason to hear it under this doctrine would be to say that the state legislature can't even delegate it, even if they chose to. They can't give the courts permission. This is as important, if not more important, of a case than overturning Roe. If you needed more incentive to get behind the idea of expanding the Supreme Court, this is it. Or perhaps, I know some people have suggested impeaching judges. I don't know that that's going to work. It seems like it would be easier to expand the court. And this is a huge deal. It sounds very dry, very boring. And when you read about it, yeah, it is. But when you take this to its conclusion, what it means is you don't have a voice anymore. And when you look back at the times when the Supreme Court has tossed this theory aside, that's what they said. They flat out, they're like, yeah, we have to decide whether the state legislature can do whatever it wants, or we're a country that has, some idea, at least some representation, and that the will of the people is upheld. This isn't one to look away on. This isn't one to think, oh, well, it'll be okay. It'll work itself out. It won't. This is a moment where people of every party need to make sure that they understand the consequences of it. There are, it just goes on and on. Because once this kind of power is handed to the state legislature, they really have all of the power, because they can control the vote to that degree. This is a really big deal. If you're one of those people who's like, get rid of the filibuster, this is something you need to be talking about. This is something you need to brush up on and make sure that when somebody asks you about it, you understand the long-term implications of what this means. This is probably a better reason to get rid of the filibuster and expand the court than anything. Because if they decide to implement this doctrine, that's kind of it. And right now, I want to point out that, the judges who have expressed their support for it are countered by 4 judges who are kind of like, no, that's not a good idea at all. So the fate of the country, in a way, rests in the hands of a justice who could not identify the elements of the First Amendment during her hearing. That doesn't really leave me feeling very comfortable. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.